Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the OWASP DevSlop Show. Today's show is called A Hands-On Guide to Security, Response, and Automation. But before we get to our show, a quick word from our sponsor.
This episode is sponsored by ShiftLeft. ShiftLeft Core is a SaaS-based static analysis tool that helps teams find and fix vulnerable code early in a sprint. It performs graph analysis that is inherently accurate and never takes source code off your server. By combining SAST and software composition analysis in rapid scans, it can be integrated with CI/CD tools for continuous testing. 46% of applications managed by ShiftLeft are scanned at least weekly, 14 times the rate of legacy tools. ShiftLeft is fast and safe, so scan early, scan often. Get started for free at shiftleft.io.
Hi everyone, Shanisa Cambrick here, and it's my privilege to introduce Prima Virani, who is a seasoned security professional who's worked in a variety of industries that includes consumer tech and fintech. She's a senior engineer with Segment, where she enjoys creating tools for incident detection and response, and occasionally dabbles in security DevOps. Over to you, Prima.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for the wonderful intro. And let's start along on the journey of automating ourselves out of on-call burnout and how you can do that too. As you all know, this is not death by a PowerPoint type of a session today, but there are some slides that I want to show you guys so that you all can get a glimpse into what your activity that you will do today where can it take you really, and what all can you unleash with the power of it. Because of course, with the time constraints, we can't do everything under the sun. We can definitely get started, and we can get started well, but all the further developments that you might want to do, I just wanted to show you a glimpse of what the end state looks like and what we're building towards. So let me start by telling you all a little bit about myself. I'm an information security professional, like Shanisa mentioned, and I worked across various industries in my almost decade-long career so far. And I've worked in very different environments with very different security needs, very specific security needs, pros and cons weighed against each other, and so on and so forth. Majority of it that I've worked in the security industry has been in the cert space or in the infrastructure security space, and more often than not, a combination of both. So my perspective on everything is informed by that. And right now, I'm in a role that is focused specifically on CERT meaning Security Incident Response Team. And most of you would be aware of it already, but in case you aren't, let's take a glimpse into a week in the life of CERT on call. So what does it really look like? A lot of CERT tasks that we do are repetitive because a majority of the work is responding to alerts and or configuration alerts, and the alerts keep firing and you keep responding, and it just goes on and on and on like that. It gets very mundane after you get to know the initial for few things. Then it's just it becomes a part of your nature almost, to a point where it can be detrimental to your job because you're not as aware anymore because it's been so repetitive the whole time. And it's become really mundane, and because of both of those, it becomes very error prone. As I mentioned earlier, can be detrimental to your job because there could be a very important alarm that rings that might not really catch your attention because your attention has been tuned out by all that mundaneness and all that repetition. So I want to show you an example of what that state looks like. So for example, an alert fires that says third party access detected in an AWS account, and all the context that you have there is basically that what's the name of the account, and some information that you've added for context, for example, what IP the activity came from, and what's the source of it, and what's the destination of it, and so on. But still, if you wanted to see, what that specific AWS account does, for example, you would have the account ID, the account name, but might not have any other context. So you'd have to copy that account ID. You'd have to go to another app that's probably your asset inventory, paste the account ID in there, find what this account is all about, find the people, find the basically find the reputation of the place where the access came from, and so on. And all of it is extremely manual, extremely laborious. Lots of clicking and opening tabs, copy pasting, then annotating the information that you found out. And it's just mess, like you all know it. However, repetition is almost always an opportunity for automation, because if something is repeatable, you know that you've gotten down to a process, and there are certain steps that will always be exactly the same. So that can, of course, if you do nothing with it, it can be a waste. But if you look at it as an opportunity, then it really is an opportunity to automate yourselves away and automate some of your work away. So let me show you the after state of what it looks like, what the same alert looks like after the automation has been introduced to it. So now the same alert fires third party access detected in some AWS account with just the account ID. And now we have a Sockless, which is the tool we are going to use today to start automating ourselves. Sockless says an actor from AWS account blah performed an action blah. It annotates it for you, and it says it happened on this resource in this particular account ID. And then it tells you the actor's account ID is in AWS as. So it finds out whether or not the actor's account ID is in AWS, and it finds out whether or not the account ID that it performed an action on within our environment, what's the name of that account. So if it finds the account ID in our environment as well, it tells you that it's in AWS as with this name. And the AWS account ID where the activity happened is in AWS as this name. So then once you have all that context, me as a responder, like you can see Prima at segment.com, I basically have all the information available to me. All I have to do is then make a decision on whether or not I think this is a suspicious activity or this is a false positive. In this case, it's a false positive because the actor and the action both happened within our environment. It's not like an actual real third party performed an action that we weren't aware of. So then I just mark it resolved, like in less than 5 seconds. The other way around, the before state would have taken us at least a couple of minutes before I can successfully conclusively say that this is a false positive.
Quick question, Prima.
Yeah.
How did you know it originated internally?
Because I have annotated it. If you see the comment number 2, it says the actor's AWS account ID blah is in AWS. So this is in AWS as when it finds what the account name is, it's an indicator that it is actually an internal account. Because if
so
it
you
was an
knew that
external
it
account,
was an internal account. Okay, got it. So the alert that you're pulling this data from had all that information. Okay, all right, got it.
yeah, and then so it had the actor's account ID and it has the account ID in which the action happened. It takes both those account IDs, it searches for it in our AWS accounts directory, and when if it finds an name for that particular account, then that's an indicator that it exists within our environment. So in this case, the actor's account also existed in an environment, which I'd have to manually otherwise look up, but this just tells me that. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
You have like 30 tabs open and you're just kind of searching for all this data. So this is originating from a guard duty alert. Is that
yeah, this originated from a guard, or not really. This originated from an alert we've configured ourselves. This is not a guard duty alert. This is something we configure on top of the logs from CloudTrail.
Okay, got it. So CloudTrail alert that you've done some analysis on comes in here, and then the contextualization of the alert is, you move faster here.
Correct. It's almost
Okay.
magical.
And what's the data source for all that? Is that internal data? I'm sorry, I know we're probably going to get
Internal
into that,
data.
but it's all internal data. Okay.
Yeah, it's all internal data. And in case of an truly external account, that if, for example, a Databricks account is performing some action within our AWS organization, then I wouldn't know that a particular account is in fact a Databricks account. So then, there wouldn't be that annotation. It would just say that the actor's account ID is this, and it does not exist in our AWS organization. So please, go and follow up on this, and it would auto annotate that automatically as well if that was the case.
Right. And or you'd get an IP address if you didn't get an AWS account,
Yeah,
and
I
then you'd
would
move
get
that
a
up.
account ID at least, because the account IDs are, as far as I know, if the account IDs get logged in your CloudTrail logs. So if you see an activity from a Databricks or a Snowflake account in your organization, then if you look in your CloudTrail logs, you will see the ID of the account the activity is originated from. ID will be just an alphanumeric random string, just numeric random string actually, but you will not know what the name of that account is. So
Right.
finding out that name will be then, something that you'll go and chase yourself. Does it make sense?
Okay. Yeah, totally. I'm just trying to dig in here, so
Yeah,
you can
yeah.
keep going. Yeah, we
So
ask a lot of questions. So
one quick
yeah.
question before you go on. So in
Yeah.
the case, in this incident, say you determined this was malicious. So do you send this to maybe like a ServiceNow, or, how do you continue that investigation from there?
Right. So if we determine that this is malicious, this would be something that whoever is on call would be responding to first of all. So that would be at the engineer's discretion, whoever is responding to this. Of course, we have run books for every as many alerts as we have configured, and it has proper checkpoints on, if all these checks fail, then that that's an incident, and please follow this guide to start an incident. If these two steps fail but this succeeds, then it might not be an incident, and follow up here and go do this other research. So if it is in fact an incident, then there's a incident response process that we follow internally as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. Cool. So, how long do you think this took us, right? This took us hardly 6 months of a full time engineer's time, this entire automation process, while also being actively involved in other ad hoc tasks. Meaning, when I was, rigging this up within Segment's environment, it wasn't that I was doing just that and I couldn't focus on anything else. It wasn't like 6 months of my time like that. It was 6 months of my time like, oh, I'm doing this full time, but I can also do other things. It wasn't that difficult at all, or at least I didn't find it that difficult. How did we do it? We took an open source tool called Sockless, created by Twilio, who are are basically partners now in all things we do, because Segment is now owned by Twilio, as most people would know it. So we took that tool that they'd open source, but we actually customized it to fit Segment's infrastructure. We didn't just take it as is and run it as is. That usually doesn't work with most open source tools. You do have to make it your own, and you can reap loads of benefits by doing that, including improving your security posture from time to time. And then we built the CI/CD for it and made it production ready. And this is a quick overview of what Sockless is all about. So Sockless is AWS native, like you all would know it. You went through the setup instructions, I'm pretty sure, and you'd have set up your AWS environment, and that's required because it's AWS native. Every task is a Lambda function. So every individual task is Lambda, and what I mean by that, you will experience it in the lab. All the lambdas are tied together to create a runbook in step functions. So every step, for example, annotating the information that we found is a lambda of its own. Finding the information itself is another lambda of its own. But they're all neatly tied together in a step function, which basically is the sequence of what should happen first, what should happen next, even switch states. if this, do this next step. If that, do this other next step. And then kind of merging it all back together again at some point, and so on. So every playbook is essentially a what we call a state machine. And this is the rough overview of what it looks like. So there's an alert source. It hits the API gateway. It then gets forwarded to a Lambda that actually kicks off the step functions, and then the step functions kicks off the actual task related Lambdas. That's a
So
rough architecture.
how do
Yeah.
you deploy? Do you deploy this in each account, or how does this get deployed?
Yeah. So this gets deployed with to a framework called serverless, and so we have all these serverless config files where we specify the dev stage prod states. Twilio's original open source version uses three different regions for dev stage and prod. But at Segment, we've chosen to use three different accounts for dev, stage, and prod. And all we have to do is just specify what our preferred configuration is in that config file, and then it basically happens using serverless
Cool.
and npm. Cool. So, because a lot of the functions, for example, the Lambda that puts comments, in every Jira ticket, in the dashboard and the Jira ticket, that is one function that can be used many, many, many times. All those three comments that you saw in my previous screenshot of an alert, all those comments were actually triggered by the exact same Lambda, just with different parameters each time. And that's the beauty of it. You don't have to, once you've created a Lambda, you don't have to then recreate it, provided you've made it modular enough. So that's something that we highly recommend, is keep your Lambda as narrowly scoped and as specific as possible to ensure maximum reusability. And as I mentioned earlier, at Segment, we've customized it quite a bit, and that has helped us. So the default settings are dev stage prod in separate regions. Custom is dev stage prod in separate accounts. In default, of course, error monitoring and alerting isn't enabled, because that's not something that the tool itself does. This is something that we've built in support of it. So we've built that in Datadog and Slack. So if at all a Lambda is down, for example, we get an alert about it. And then we built a CI/CD for it, because that also, of course, doesn't come out of the box. We have created a custom API gateway URL on a custom domain. The default API gateway URL would just be a random, alphanumeric string.aws.api.com or something like that. That would be very long and very complicated. So we've chosen to put it on a custom domain. And then we've created a new default Lambda execution role as well, to make that Lambda execution role more narrowly scoped again. And the default has no log retention duration. We've set it to 30 days. And secret handling is done slightly differently in the default and in the custom. I'll definitely go through that with you all. And then how do you start? There's the getting started tutorial, there's the community Slack workspace, and there's today's workshop. That's how you start. Once we start, you'll be able to, join the Slack channel as well, or you can do it right now already. And serverless framework docs are your friends. They're not very thorough, not very detailed, but they are certainly very, very useful. And if you want to, again, customize it as much as possible, just reading hours and hours of reading through that serverless document is going to take you very far. And you'll be able to basically, it'll be like your fully customized car with a fully customized engine, not just the, body color different, everything different. Yeah. Do you all have any questions so far before we start actually diving into the workshop?
I do have one quick question. So, because attacks change, that threat modeling changes, how often do you find that you're going back to update your Lambdas in that whole process of automation?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. The lambdas itself are not actually getting updated because they are modular and they are built to do a very specific thing. New lambdas are added all the time though to do something new, and or old lambda might be decommissioned if we find it, find that something else is already covering this functionality. That happens very rarely. What does get updated very frequently all the time is the actual runbook. The step functions in which we've tied all the lambdas together, that gets updated all the time because sometimes we might realize that we want to add additional context, a field that we were not previously annotating, we now want to annotate. Or we want to change this comment a little bit to make it a little more descriptive, or little things like those come up all the time. But as we add new functionalities, the runbooks change, and runbooks anyways change more frequently than the lambdas themselves.
Thank you.
I see a question from Michael. Where is the Slack channel? The Slack channel, once you start the getting started tutorial, the Slack channel link is right there. It's literally called sockless slack.com, I think. I'll definitely make sure that oh yeah, you all have shared the link to it already. Oh, you all are on so top of it. Cool. Are there any other questions before we start working on the actual tutorial?
Looks like there's one from Joshua.
What's up? Do you push the info that gets cooked in the decisioning process over to the team spinning up policies so they can use that info to get policies spun up that cut closer to the bone for what's needed? Hmm. Do we push the info? So policies meaning whoever is setting up the alerts. Joshua?
I think maybe what I'm getting from his comment is the decision making process that Sockless does. Is that detailed anywhere in Sockless?
So for now, the decision making process is, oh, you're thinking of AWS policies. I see, I see. So the AWS policies are not necessarily tied into Sockless, not just yet, at least. Um, yeah, that's not tied into Sockless just yet. What is tied into Sockless is what we choose to alert on, the context, and all the data fields that we choose to select to add context to that particular alert, and then some of the follow-up actions that we do with that context data. That's part of Sockless, but the AWS policies are not really. Are there any other questions?
I think we're good to
Good to
move on.
go?
Yeah.
Demo time.
Yay.
Let's do it.
Let's get started. Let all the fun begin. Let me change my sharing here. So I'm sharing the tutorial doc. Okay, do you see this? Let me make it slightly broader. Okie dokie. I believe you all have run all the steps until the specifying AWS profile step, and you've cloned the Sockless repo. You've installed all the dependencies. You've created a virtual environment. In the instructions I gave you all in the handout, the virtual environment setup is on the top, not at the bottom, and there's a reason for it. The reason why I recommend doing that first is because your dependencies might be dependency install might error out if you don't do it in a virtual environment, because it might have conflicts with Python versions and so on. Sockless is written in Python. So always recommended to set up a virtual environment for the specific setup that uses a specific version of Python, and so on and so forth. So assuming you all have completed all of that, let's start working towards specifying the AWS profile, which is if you open your repo, um, you can see that there's a entire directory in there. So let me open it on my side. And FYI, as y'all go through it, I'll be going through it with you, so we are both in this together. CD. Okay, so the documents you see within the Sockless directory are, there are many folders and everything. And the one that I want you to modify is a file called package.json. And that
Prima,
is,
quick question. Are you meaning to share the instructions still, or are you wanting to share something else?
I'm still sharing the instructions. Should
Okay.
I share my? I can share my screen, terminal screen as well,
Okay.
if you all prefer that.
I think that might be helpful for people.
Okay,
Thank
let
you.
me share my terminal screen then. Doo-doo-doo. So, share. You all see that now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Maybe just, I'm sorry, a touch bigger, just because I'm sure that'll happen. Someone will ask that in a second. All right, there we go.
Yeah.
Better?
Perfect.
Cool. Awesome. So a lot of you would have the AWS profile that you need to configure. What you'd have to do is, if you are using a account with a security key and API key and so on to use with AWS CLI, you might want to do that config setup right now. The environment in which I use Sockless is all single sign-on enabled and so on. So a lot of the actual setting up of the API key and my user profile in AWS CLI and all, I don't have to go through that. So before we start, make sure that you all can definitely see all the right credentials configured in your for your AWS CLI config, because if that's not correct, then you'll again run through a lot of errors. So should dev stage, prod, and sandbox all be set to the same region? Actually, don't even worry about dev stage, prod separation just yet, because for this demo, we'll only be running everything in dev profile by default, and we won't be running anything in any of the other profiles. The process of deploying to other profiles is literally, you can copy paste it. So the process of deploying to dev is npm run dev. The process of deploying to prod is npm run prod. So once you learn dev, you'll have learned everything else anyways. And then the region settings, or change different account settings for prod and all, you can always do that later on your own. So for the scope of this particular demo, we'll just deploy everything in dev, and you can deploy a prod and a stage on your own later.
Cool.
Yeah. So let's get started here.
Mark is asking, should dev, stage, prod, and sandbox all be set to the same region for this demo?
Yeah, I mentioned that already.
Yeah.
So for this
Okay.
demo, it doesn't matter what you set it to, because we are not going to be deploying in any other, environments anyways. We
Yeah.
are only going to be deploying in dev. So for now, just worry about dev. Keep your dev in US West 2, and that should be good enough. In stage and prod, they can deploy it on their own after the workshop, because it's the same command they have to run, npm run dev, but with just with just the dev change to
Yep.
stage, yeah, or prod. Cool.
All right.
I'm also side by side comparing it with our setup. So if there are any changes and so on, I'll let you all know. There's definitely going to be a change in the version, as far as I know, but let me verify that. So version 1.0, and have we pinned it to? Integration packager is pinned to the correct version. Yes. Okay. I think we should be good here now. So let's move on to the deployment step here. So all you have to do once you set all of that up, all you have to do is do an npm run dev. Yeah. I'll change that to is. Oh, no, never mind. Yeah, so here are, for the error that I just hit, here are the changes that I need to make. Yep, and this should work. In the meanwhile, I'm going to share my VS Code screen, because that's where I do most of my sockless work and not necessarily in VI. So to move, faster, I'm going to set that up, and I'm going to share my screen. So bear with me here while it deploys.
And just a side question, Prima. So is there a link for the instructions or commands that you're using, or is that something available in the Slack channel once people join?
So the commands that I'm using right now, the npm run dev that I used, that's in the sockless tutorial
Okay.
link. Let me actually share the link here. Uh, I'll share it with you all, and share it with the link, and you can share it with everybody in the comment section. Yes, Mark, that's correct. Update the dev line in package.json as follows. Let me open it in VS Code, as I said, and it'll make reading easier on your eyes and on my eyes as well. So just give me a second, and I'll get that up and running like ASAP. Okay, I'll stop sharing my screen and briefly, and I'll share my VS Code instead. Share screen, window, VS Code. And here is our package.json. This is so much better today on the eyes, because I work in VS Code all the time. I haven't color coded my terminal at all, and yeah, setting that up is going to be a lot of pain right now and going to take up a lot of time. So I thought it'd be better just to do it here. So what we have, oh shoot, this is the wrong, sorry, wrong directory. I have a directory with uh with segment sockless, and oh dang, I have a directory with dev slop test sockless.
It's not a live demo unless you have some type of challenge. So
I know, right? I'm so sorry. Right here. I'm going to, I'm literally going to remove all these pre-tests, post-tests, all those um, things for clarity
speed it up.
and readability, in favor of readability. Just keep dev stage prod. So changing dev to changing that default AWS profile specification, what that does is it just picks up in my environment. That works because I'm not really specifying a profile. I'm literally directly deploying into the environment, in the dev environment, with that specific AWS account, and so on and so forth. Another way of changing your AWS profile would be actually to set up a default profile, and make it point to your dev, and then this command would work exactly right with the AWS profile, and so on and so forth. But if you don't want to do that, you can just remove that AWS profile specification line, and it should work automagically. Okay, let's see how it has deployed. Looks like it's deployed perfectly fine. Awesome. So if you look at your terminal, you will see a whole lot of functions that have been deployed. There's the HTTP request, there's the merge parallel output, save message response token, and so on
Can you
and so
throw
forth.
your terminal back on the screen?
Actually, let me share my entire screen.
All right, sorry.
This whole sharing
I
specific
just want to.
windows does not seem to be working. Entire screen. There we go. That's my entire screen right there. You see it?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay, wonderful. So these are all the things that should have ideally gotten deployed into your AWS account wherever you've chosen to deploy it. And this AWS API Gateway ID is very important. That's noteworthy. What Mark is getting an error. What error is he getting? Serverless error stuck with ID sockless dev does not exist.
Hey, Prima, is there a way to share your screen without sharing like some of the extra stuff that's on the side? Yeah, there we go.
But then I won't be able to read any comments. So please read out comments to me.
Yeah, we'll cover it.
Yeah,
Okay,
we'll do it.
awesome. I'll do half and half then. I'll do half of VS Code and half of
Thank you.
serverless. Okay, cool. Sockless does not exist. I actually haven't seen that error before, Mark.
Maybe just run that again.
Maybe make sure that you're running it in your virtual environment. Make sure that serverless tool itself is deployed. Those are some of the only things that I can think of. If you try a couple more times, if you still need help, ping me in the Sockless Slack channel after the session, and I can help you there. Maybe that way, we're not kind of holding others up who might have had this step completed already and might be ready to move on to the next steps. Are most people done up until this point?
I think we can keep going.
Okay,
Yeah.
wonderful. Let's keep going then. So the next step is to verify that the thing actually got deployed. How do you do that? You basically log into whichever account you're developing your things in. And if you go to CloudFormation, you should be able to see a stack called Sockless and a stack that says Sockless Dev, and it should be updated, and it should say update complete, and it deploys many different artifacts. So serverless is what creates this CloudFormation template for you using all the different parameters we pass and specify in the package.json file and in serverless.yaml file. And that's how this whole thing is deployed. So if you see update time here, 12th of September, 10:36, that's today in UTC. So that's how everything got deployed the way it's supposed to. Moving on to the next steps. Let's write our first playbook. So this is our first, before we write a playbook, we have to actually write the Lambda function, like we mentioned earlier. So how do you write the Lambda function? The way you do it is people at Twilio who open source Sockless, they have done a phenomenal job at both creating the tool, of course, but also at writing the document. I've never come across an open source tool that has such thorough and such easy to read documentation. And big props to them for doing that, especially Ubani and Saxon. They are the guys you should definitely say hello to if you log into that Sockless Slack channel. They're wonderful people. Ubani has built this, and Saxon is actively a part of maintaining it now as well. So say hi to them. So now we want to set up an integration template. So what you have to do is you have to, again, clone the Sockless tutorial repo that they've already set up for you. They've done half the work, which is fantastic. In your whichever directory you are in, don't put it in the Sockless directory, because that will result in errors, because each directory must only have one serverless.yaml file, and so on and so forth. So put it one directory above at the same level as where Sockless is sitting. So let's do a git clone. Oh, actually, never mind. There's two git clones in there. Pasta issues. Awesome. We're in Sockless tutorial now. Let me make sure that I set up my virtual environment. So if you go one directory up, this is what your directory structure should now look like. What was my environment name called? It's not in here. Okay. This is to make sure that I'm having my own prescribed medicine and not doing funky things without being in a virtual environment and potentially running into errors, which I know I definitely will run into. So plus tutorial, and then all we have to do is run the setup. It is wrong window. Right here. Yeah. So / setup. Okay. Oh, they don't have a setup file anymore? That doesn't make any sense.
Go back in that directory.
There is a setup.cfg. What is it talking about? Did I...
Huh. Hold on, let me...
Oh, do I have to make it... Maybe I have to ch mode it?
I mean, you could try an ls-a, but I don't think it's in there.
I see setup.cfg right here.
Where?
Right here.
Cat that, though, for a second? I think that's not the setup. Like it's not a executable. It's just like a little
Correct. So that's what
tiny.
I was saying. Maybe I have to change mode. But actually, I don't think the setup is necessarily
Okay.
required per se. We can move on to the next steps, and if we
Okay.
run into an error, then we run into an error, and then we'll take care of it then. Um, so let me add to this workspace. Um, um, Save workspace as I'll add folder to workspace, which is our Suckless tutorial folder as well. Yes, I trust the files in this folder. Wonderful. So this is the functions directory, and that is where we'll be making our next change. So what we have to do is coding the GeoIP location. Clone the Suckless integrations template in a folder name, Suckless tutorial, and so on and so forth. Coding the GeoIP integration. Oh, in this directory as well, there is a serverless.yaml file and a package.json file where you'll have to make that same change that you had to make last time. And this doesn't need, it's already written correctly. It's not specifying an AWS profile or anything like that. So this works. This is going to be fine. This should run fine. Now our integration will have a Lambda handler function, all of this. So what we need to do is in the functions directory, create a new folder called Suckless, rename Suckless, geolocate IP. Okay, within it, you should create a new file called lambda underscore function pi. So this is a good point, good place to pause and for me to highlight something. Circlers expects all the Lambda functions to actually go inside a file called lambda underscore function dot pi. No matter how many functions you write, all the function names should be in their own directory, and every function should have a lambda underscore function dot pi, every single one. Every lambda underscore function dot pi must have a lambda underscore handler function, because that's the AWS lambda Python design. So yeah, every lambda underscore function must have a lambda underscore handler. So make sure you don't miss that. Cool. So what this will do is you basically copy paste the import that entire blob. What this will do is you give it IP, and it'll tell you what the which country the IP is coming from, what's the latitude and what's the longitude, and you will be able to then use that output in the playbook that you create. So that's the idea. Every output, every result must be dictionary. What am I saying? It must be a dictionary, because otherwise it'll error out. It expects dictionary as an output. Even if you have no output, it'll you might need to put that kind of none inside a dictionary, as far as I remember. Specify in the lambda function directory, create a subdirectory called GOIP and save implementation in a file. Okay, so they are calling this sockless GOIP just GOIP. I can rename that GOIP as long as the function name is lambda underscore function dot py. And then what you'll have to do is specify dependencies. So because the dependency exists in it has to import, it has a dependency on the sockless folder. What we have to do is we have to make sure that in that's where requirements.txt we make sure that the dependency exists. So actually, don't change the first line. Let it sit on the 1.5.0, and let's not have it on the master, because that's 1.5.0 is the latest version. Just copy the requests and put it in the directory. Put it in the file in there, and that should work. What else? Now, what you'll have to do is go to serverless.yaml file. This is where we tell serverless that we've created a new function. This is the directory in which the new function sits, and please, run it. So inside the functions section, what you do is you create a new blurb called let's copy paste it as exactly as it is. So inside here, dang. Okay. Make sure the indentation is correct. And awesome. So if you look at serverless.yaml, it actually describes what's what. So it says, this is an example of a sockless function. This is the lambda function dot lambda handler. That's always keep it the same all the time. And then the name of the function can be sockless tutorial GOIP. And this will be the name that you will see in your AWS account where the deployment happens. And the description will be what the function does. And then the function name is, so this function is referenced from the functions directory from the GeoIP folder. And this makes sure that it takes it knows where to look that lambda underscore function dot py in. So this is the definition. If I had you can see in the example here, if this was a function called send old timey telegram, then the package that you'd want to include would be the functions directory and then the folder called send old timey telegram. That's what helps us then eventually find the lambda underscore functions dot py and so on. Now, another thing that you have to do is for every function that you create, the resources have to be that function has to be declared in the output section, because if you don't do that, you will not be able to in the next steps you will not be able to then successfully refer to that function when you start creating the sockless playbook. So do keep that in mind. Every function must be included in the output section here for it to be able to successfully reference it in the future then when we start running the playbook. So here the description would be exactly the same as above, and value, and I'll literally just copy this line. So I'll just change that to GOIP. Oh, actually keep the lambda function as it is. Lambda function must always remain. Just change this portion. And description is copy it from here. And the value is that is done. Next, we need to ensure that, the AWS ARN of the function is output. They say it here. So this will allow the ARN to be referenced by the playbook that we will write shortly. Perfect. Let's deploy it. I had not saved this, and this would have resulted in errors. Please save your things, people. Okay. Let's run our npm everything. Here, serverless config file. Okay, where are we using serverless cpb? Okay. Oh, that's because so just a second, okay? Because I kind of started my virtual environment halfway through. Let me make sure that all the dependencies are I did the package.json go right here. Okay, let's do that. If you hit the same error, let's try.
No. Here, let me. This is like a good mix of like node dependencies, Python dependencies, all across AWS stack. This is like a perfect storm of troubleshooting here. So.
Okay. Okay, perfect. So what worked was in the serverless, in the sockless tutorials directory, just run an npm install. It'll install all the dependencies, and that'll make sure that you don't run into that weird SLS underscore app error. Now it's back to that AWS profile default is not specified, and that we've fixed that before, so we know how that's done. Dev. Let me just copy config and then run the script as is, because I don't know what changes they've made of late, but in our version, that's how it works. And in the init, test, pretest, post-test, print, everything gets blown off. Why is it complaining about AWS profile default? It's not even using it anywhere. Strange behavior.
Sometimes those credentials will just log out. Maybe just type in AWS configure again and just throw them back in.
Oh, never mind. Let me just open it here.
What is it complaining about? The AWS credential now? Maybe just try get caller identity and see what's going on. Like, yeah, just AWS. AWS profile default doesn't seem to be configured. So type in AWS. Yeah, okay.
This is working. Where is it?
Do you think that the
I'm trying to
Okta
find default and I don't get
Federation is
that.
messed up and not
Or timing out, like you said.
translating over? Because isn't serverless or isn't stockless just using the AWS CLI like natively, or is it? Like if you just type in AWS get caller identity, you could probably just see if the default profile without specifying any profile actually works. Or you type in AWS LS, I don't know, S3 or whatever.
Let it install and I'll go through the reinstallation again. Is everybody else doing okay? Were they able to deploy sockless? What's going on? I haven't seen y'all's screen in a while now.
I think there was a little bit of trouble, but sounds like people are back.
Going back to the okay, 11 or 7. Try to remove package log.json and reinstall. Yeah, I might do that actually. I'm a little behind, but serverless command not found. So you'll have to make sure that you install the install serverless itself. If you haven't managed to get that solved, you'll have to install serverless. Um, Going back to in the tutorials directory, repo root there, Nicole's comments. Yeah, it wasn't setup.cfg was not set to executable mark. And that's what I was thinking. I should probably just chmod make it executable, and that should have worked. But then I just decided to move on and wait, process completed. I'll have to open a new tab. No, I see, never mind.
Primo, you want to reduce maybe the other Google tab?
Start my did stop sharing.
I think we're good now.
Okay. Now let me run the command. Find in folder. Let me find default. I'm just gonna clean this up and old timey.
So you use AWS Okta because that's how you access AWS, correct? Through Okta? I think it could be something in there where your federation, that serverless might be literally looking for the native AWS CLI.
This tutorial used to look very different, and that's kind of throwing me off a little bit. For the playbooks, we used to have a separate directory called Sockless Playbooks, even in the tutorial. And we highly recommend doing that in your actual production environment as well. Have a directory for Sockless functions. Have another directory, a separate directory for Sockless Playbooks. Will help keep everything nice and tidy. Yeah, so if I'll try it once more, but if I can't get it to work, I'm afraid we might have to.
Prima, I just want to check sound on our end. Make sure you can hear me and Nicole.
Can you hear us?
I don't think
have
so.
old
Shanisa, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Nicole.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like Prima's not hearing us.
Uh-oh.
That explains a few things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you hear us?
Nice and simple. Let me see if I can get this to work.
I don't think she could hear us. Uh-oh. I'm trying body language now, but she's probably drilled into the
I
terminal
think
here
this will
so
work.
hard.
It is packaging.
Prima. Can you hear us?
Yeah, the new tutorial structure that they've updated, they've put the playbooks directory in there as well, and I think that's causing a little bit of confusion. The old structure I'll literally show you here. Let me open the one that works. Add folder to workspace. Twilio, Sockless tutorial, and let me add that. Yes. This is what it used to look like. It was very simple, very clean, just the functions inside here. And the package.json looked like this. And it was happy times. Let me check my package.json once more to see. remove it from everything. You don't need AWS profile. Okay, so it's trying to pick something up. Yeah, this is working. The old setup is working perfectly fine. The tutorial and everything. Can I hear my teammates? They've been speaking to me. Okay. The co-hosts are trying to speak. Oh my god, I wasn't able to hear them at all. Hey everyone. I'm so sorry. I don't know at which
We're glad we
point
got you back.
it muted itself. I don't know. I'm so sorry.
No, it's totally fine. I was like trying to go like this and get your attention, but I'm glad we got you back. So,
Yeah.
cool. So I think what we were trying to do is help you troubleshoot through that default profile thing, but it looks like you've totally sidestepped that and rolled back to an older version that was totally working.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've solved that problem. I think yeah, so maybe we could just see if we can get the one use case working, so that we can sort of have that clean demo, because I know we're sort of running up on time here. So
Yeah, definitely. So
cool.
now that I've removed the, default from everywhere, let me try one more time if I can get that package.json working. If we
Okay.
can't, what I'll do is I'll zip the folder, the tutorials folder that is working, and somehow send it over or something. That way, you know that that's the setup your things will definitely work with.
Yeah.
So I can do that. Just let me try one more time in the other tutorials directory and see if I can get it to work. But if I still can't, then I won't take any more of your time. And
Do you think it's related to your Octave federated ID and the AWS CLI not understanding how to deal with that?
um,
Or am I just barking up the wrong tree there?
it could very well be, but so the funny thing is it seems to be specific to this particular tutorials directory, because
Okay.
in the other sockless directory, the AWS federated Octa
Right, it
federated
works
thing
fine. Yeah.
works perfectly fine. Yeah, exactly. So it's something to do with devslop test plus tutorial and fingers crossed. I'm so sorry, people.
Oh no,
Well,
please.
troubleshooting is real life, right?
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
like dug in, so I totally understand
yeah,
what that's
yeah.
about.
I'll send over the tutorials repo if you like. Should I do it right now, or
You
how
could
should we
drop
go
it in
to
the
it?
chat. Is it a zip file? You want to push it to GitHub or?
I can push it to GitHub actually. That might in fact work better. Let me push it to my own personal GitHub. So give me a second here.
And just so I understand, the goal of the demo was to basically do in real life, like the infrastructure that would do all those lookups, ARN account, or parse out the ARNs from the alerts, look up an IP address to give you a geographic location, or if it's on an abuse list and things like that, right? That was what we were trying to. And I guess
Correct.
just a quick question on Socklist. Where does it get the data for? I guess geographical IP data is not that hard to get, but abuse data, does it get like data that's like open source, like OS?
So you can specify where you want to get data from. Sockless on
Okay.
its own, it's just a framework. It doesn't. So for this particular tutorial, the GeoIP lookup is happening from a particular website. But in reality, we get, for example, we choose to get a lot of our abuse data or whatever from this tool called Anubis, which one of my colleagues has written. So let me link you all to that. You can look up IP reputation using that. So Let me see if he has open sourced it. I think he has open sourced it. It's called Anubis.
And could you change that? Like if you had a commercial subscription feed that you were paying for other areas of your org, does Sockless have the ability to, I don't know, interact with other sources?
Yeah, Sockless can interact with what sources were you thinking of interacting
I
with?
don't know. Some organizations have commercial subscriptions to threat feeds
Security
or
trails.
yeah, security trails,
As long as you have an API key, right? Because it's really just a Lambda function that is trying to make a
Mhm.
GET request to Security Trails API. And as long as you have the API key, you add it to a parameter store. You make sure that your Lambda is able to, access that API key successfully. Make the GET request the way you normally would in Python. Make that a lambda called security trails sockless underscore security trails underscore lookup. So here, this is the tutorial function and all its resources. Now if I look in the lambda section, you'll be able to see that GeoIP function that we just created. So here, sockless underscore tutorial underscore GeoIP. There we go. So this is what the function looks like. This. So you're
Got
making
it.
a GET request, passing the params, and doing just a regular lookup. Instead of looking this up in tools.keycdn.com, you could replace that. This GET request can be made to security trails, the with an authentication header, however, whatever format it expects you to send a request in. That can
Got it.
be another lambda called sockless underscore security trails underscore lookup. And the way it all ties together is, let me show you that really quickly as well. Sorry about the glitch there while trying
Oh
to
no.
deploy.
Totally understand.
Geo. What the hell? Sockless core integration test. I don't think that would be it. The playbook has probably not been deployed, so geez.
So, a quick question on my end about what percentage of this has your team been able to automate versus things that are still manual?
We've been able to automate, say, in a lot of our playbooks, we've been able to automate them to at least about 40 to 50%. There are some things that are still manual. So the things that are still manual are decision making stuff. In terms of deciding whether or not we do consider it an actual risk, or do we consider this a false positive. We haven't matured it to a point where that decision is made for us. However, we have matured it to a point where the risk rating is, in some ways auto applied depending on the logic that we've set it to. So for example, if there is an activity coming from an IP address that has been flagged by one of our alerts, we look that IP address up in security trails, secure or Anubis, and we get a risk rating, for example, from them. Now, depending on what risk rating they give us, we set our severity to be a number above 3 or below 3. And then if it's below 3, if it's let's say if the a particular IP is deemed to be abusive, then the risk rating has been set to 2. The default is always 3, but now it's been set to 2. If the IP was deemed to be clean by multiple sources, then let's automatically set the risk rating to a 4 and lower the risk. So all those types of automations we've inserted in there, and all those logics we've inserted in there. But as far as the actual decision making is concerned, we are doing it manually still. Our analysts, and in this case, analysts are us.
And any thought about automating that piece as well? If it's like a 1, 2, 3-step process and it's always the same, for certain types of threats, any thought to automating that piece?
Automating which piece?
The actual review of the item to say that this is a false positive versus this is an actual incident.
100%. We definitely want to get to that point, and this whole auto assigning and auto adjusting risk rating is very much a first step in that direction. So if we are successfully auto assigning risk ratings, then we know that our trust in the system is high enough to let it give us a risk rating, and it's doing it accurately enough. Once we are really happy with that setup, then the next, I think, logical step would be to get it to auto close tickets and annotate it as much as possible in the ticket logs. For example, all our tickets are logged in Jira, let's say, and then in Jira, the auto close tickets still have that annotation going on, and so on, that this is all the steps performed on this particular alert, and this is why it was marked as a false positive. I think we are a while away from that level of trust in the system, though. So we won't do it till we get the whole risk rating situation, totally sorted out. And
makes sense. Yep.
Yeah. Do you all have any more questions?
No, I think we're good in the chat. Thanks for everyone's patience here. Demos and workshops are always a challenge. Nancy and I did one recently where we hit the AWS quota limit early on, and we had to basically beg and hope that it was changed quickly. Otherwise, the whole thing was going to go south. And we get it. We totally get it.
I'm so sorry. And
no.
If you want to continue the party in the Slack channel, let's hang in the Sockless Slack channel, and let's continue the party there.
Yeah, and I'll just make an announcement. We have a show coming up, which is next Saturday, September 18th, with Alex Rosenwig. He's an application security engineer at Afterpay. It's called Software Security at Rocket Ship Pace. So look out for that. It's on our meetup page. Those will be linked in. Please join us. And I think that is it. Any wrapping final words here, Prima, that you'd like to...
Thank you so much, everyone. The whole, I'm so sorry about the tutorials repo not necessarily installing the way we expected it to. And we'll make sure that I speak to my peers at Twilio about it, and whichever parts need to be fixed, we'll, get it working right away. Once you go across that one barrier, it's a really smooth tool to, it's a really smooth process to deploy the tool and so on. I've been working with it day in, day out for at least the last 7 to 8 months, and it's not been, like this at all. So please don't be discouraged by the little kind of roadblock that we hit. The tool is, in fact, amazing. We've built a lot of things with it, and we've done, numerous demos, and our teams really enjoy it. So thank you so much for your time today, and thank you so much for attending this session.
Yeah. Thank you, Shanisa, for co-hosting today. Do you have any final thoughts or anything you'd like to tell the audience?
So Prima, it happens. It's real life. So
yeah. Cool.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
All right. Well, we'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.